Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Jaya Narottam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Didi Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhakter Bhavati Nashtike. So continuing with the discussion on Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita by Srila Goswami, Volume 2, Planting the Seed, New York City, 1965 to 1966. Chapter 21st, Beyond the Lower East Side. So Prabhupada is getting on with his preaching and his the landlord, Prabhupada saying how hard he is working even after investing so much money. Those disciples who lived at the storefront had risen by 6:30, bathed and assembled downstairs by 7, while those who lived outside were arriving separately, taking off their coats and piling them on the shelf of the display window. Although women always attended the evening meetings, Jadurani was usually the only girl who came in the morning. After breakfast, she would begin painting upstairs in the Swami's front room. She used a beginner's technique of dividing the canvas into vertical and horizontal grid lines and transposing bit by bit the corresponding sections of a photograph onto the canvas. The process was painstaking and sometimes her painting was out of proportion. But Jadurani was sincere and that pleased Prabhupada. She had completed several paintings of four-armed Vishnu, a new painting of Radha Krishna, and a painting of Lord Chaitanya and his associates. When the painting of Lord Chaitanya was finished, Swamiji had it hung in the temple. Now he announced, there should be no more nonsense here. Lord Chaitanya is present. After the morning kirtan, Swami said, as usual, now chant one round. They chanted together, following him. They all had a vow to chant 16 rounds daily, but they chanted the first round in the morning in Swamiji's presence, so he could see each of them. As Swamiji chanted, he looked out at 2nd Avenue, which was mostly deserted, or at the pictures on the wall, or with concerned glances at the individual devotees. Sometimes he seemed surprised when he saw them chanting so earnestly, giving evidence of the power of the holy name to deliver even the most fallen. Some of the devotees kept their beads in a bead bag like his, but when they chanted the first round together in the morning, they imitated him by holding the beads out in both hands and chanting along with him, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, until they finished one round. Then he held up the unfamiliar red book. Because you are little advanced, he said, I'm going to read today from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Chaitanya what? No one was able to pick up the pronunciation. They had heard of Chaitanya, certainly, but not of this new book. But in his room the night before, Prabhupada had informed some of the devotees that he would start reading from a new book, Chaitanya Charitamrita. He said that Lord Chaitanya had told one of his disciples that understanding Krishna wasn't really possible, but that he would give the disciple just a drop of the ocean of Krishna consciousness so that the disciple could then appreciate what the whole ocean must be like. Be patient as I present this. He had told them, it is revolutionary, but you should just be patient. In the storefront, Brahmananda turned on the reel-to-reel tape recorder as Swamiji began reading the Bengali verses. And both Satswarup and Umapati opened their notebooks and waited, poised for rapid note-taking. It was almost a college classroom atmosphere, as Prabhupada cleared his throat, put on his eyeglasses, and peered over the large, open volume, turning to the correct page. Whenever he wore the glasses, he seemed to reveal a new personality of deep Vaishnava scholarship. This feature of Swamiji emphasized his old age, not that it showed him feeble or invalid, but it emphasized his scholarship and wisdom and his contemplation of the scriptures, in contrast to his vigorous drum playing in Tompkins Square Park or his alert business dealings while looking for a new building. Swamiji began reading and translating the story of Sanatan. Satsrup wrote Sutta and Umapati wrote Sonutan, and his brother Rupa, who and how they became intimate associates of Lord Chaitanya. It was a historical account. Rupa and Sanatan had been born as Brahmins in India, but they had served in the government under the Muslims, who were in power at that time. The two brothers had even adopted Muslim names. But when Lord Chaitanya was touring in their part of the country, they had met him and had become determined to give up their materialistic ways and follow his path of pure love of God. Rup, who was so rich that he had enough gold to fill 2 boats, left his high government post, divided his wealth, became a mendicant, and joined Lord Chaitanya. For Sanatan, however, there were more obstacles. The Nawab Shah, the chief Muslim ruler of the province of Bengal, was dependent on Sanatan's managerial expertise, but Sanatan began staying home and submitting sick reports, while actually he had employed a dozen Brahmins who were teaching him the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Nawab sent his physician to find out the actual state of Sanatan's health. And when Nawab heard that Sanatan was not actually ill, he himself arrived one day, surprising Sanatan and the Brahmins. The Nawab demanded that Sanatan return to his government work and leave him free to do some hunting and to leave Bengal on a military campaign. But Sanatan said no, he could not, and that he was now determined to study the scriptures, and that the Nawab could do with him whatever he liked. At this challenge, the Nawab imprisoned Sanatan. Swamiji looked at his watch. Morning classes were shorter than those in the evening, only half an hour, and Rupanuga, Satsarup, and Brahmananda had to go to work. He paused in his narration, so we will discuss tomorrow. Prabhupada closed the book, and after a few informal words, he got up and left the storefront, followed by Kirtananda, who carried his book and glasses. Breakfast was served every morning in the storefront. Either Achyutananda or Kirtananda would cook an oatmeal cereal for the devotees. Satswarup had read in an English edition of the Ramayana about some sages preparing a mystical cereal called heavenly porridge. The name had caught on, and the devotees began calling their own cereal heavenly porridge. The popular fare would consist of steaming hot heavenly porridge, sweetened to taste with sugar syrup from the gulab jamun pot, hot milk, and fruit. And each devotee would get an ISKCON bullet or ISKCON gulab jamun. So that was good breakfast. At breakfast this morning, the talk was of Rupa and Sanatan. Umapati said that Chaitanya Charitamrita was available in an English translation, but maybe the Swami wouldn't want them to read it. We'll hear it from Swamiji, Kirtananda said. Hayagri was amused at the cliffhanger ending of the class. Tune in tomorrow, he laughed loosely, and hear what happened to, what's his name? The devotees responded differently. Santan, Sanatan, Sanatan. Hayagri, yeah. Tune in tomorrow and hear. Will Sanatan get out of jail? They were not the most sober group when together, especially after taking the thick, sweet syrup. Achyutananda spilled some of the syrup on the rug, and Kirtananda admonished him. Jadurani ate silently and hurried to begin a day's painting in Prabhupada's room. Satswarup adjusted his tie, and he and Rupanuga and Brahmananda went to their jobs. The next morning, Chaitanya Charitamrita seminar began with Sanatan in jail, planning how to get free to join Lord Chaitanya. His brother Rupa sent him a note saying that he had left a large sum of gold for Sanatan in care of a grocer, and Sanatan offered the gold to the jailer as a bribe. He told him, "Sir, I know you are a very learned man, and in your Quran it says that if you aid someone in going to a spiritual life, then you will be elevated to the highest post. I am going to Lord Chaitanya, and if you will assist me in escaping, it will be spiritual gain for you. Also, I'll give you 500 gold coins." So it will be material gain as well. The jailkeeper said, all right, but I'm afraid of the king. Nawab Hussain Shah. So Sanatan advised him, just say that when, oh, got kicked out. Hmm. Jailkeeper said, all right, but I'm afraid of the king. So Sanatan advised him, just say that when I was passing stool by the river, I fell in with my chains and was washed away. For 700 gold coins, the jailer agreed to help Sanatan and sawed off the shackles. Sanatan, accompanied by his servant, then fled by the back roads until by night time he came upon a hotel. Now, this hotel was kept by thieves, and an astrologer at the hotel read Sanatan's palm and judged by the stars that he had money. When Sanatan asked for assistance in passing over the jungle mountains, the hotel keeper said that he would help Sanatan leave in the dead of the night. They treated Sanatan with great respect, which made him suspicious, since he hadn't eaten in 3 days and his clothes were unclean. So he asked his servant if he had any money. The servant said yes. He had 7 gold coins, and Sanatan immediately took the money to the hotel keeper, who was already planning to kill him during the night and take his money. Swamiji looked at his watch, and they had gone over time. So we will continue tomorrow, he said, closing his book. How Sanatan manages to escape the dacoits. Kirtananda, Brahmananda, Chitananda, Gargamuni, Satsarup, Haigri, Umapati, Jadurani, Rupanuga, Damodar, Dan Clark became Damodar. Their lives had all been transformed. Over the months, they had transferred the center of their lives to Swamiji, and everything revolved around the routine of classes and kirtan and prasadam and coming and going to and from the storefront. See how much they were enjoying this. Their life just revolved around Prabhupada and serving in the storefront. Brahmananda and Gargmuni had given up their apartment several months ago and moved into the storefront. The ceiling of Achyutananda's apartment had caved in one day, just minutes after he had left the room, and he had decided to move to the storefront also. Haigriv and Umapati had cleaned up their Mott Street place and were using it only for chanting, sleeping, or reading Swamiji's Bhagavatam. Sasarup had announced one day that the devotees could use his apartment just around the corner from the temple for taking showers, and the next day Rairam had moved in, and the others began using the apartment as a temple annex. Jadurani kept making her early morning treks from the Bronx, and Swamiji had said that he had no objection to her living in the second room of his apartment, but that people would talk. Even Rupanuga and Damodar, whose backgrounds and tastes were different, were also positively dependent on the daily morning class and the evening class 3 nights a week, and in knowing that Swamiji was always there in his apartment whenever they needed him. There were, however, some threats to this security. Prabhupada would sometimes say that unless he got permanent residency from the government, he would have to leave the country. But he had gone to a lawyer, and after the initial alarm, it seemed that Swamiji would stay indefinitely. There was also the threat that he might go to San Francisco. He said he was going, but then sometimes he said he wasn't. If the negotiations through Mr. Price for the building on 10th Street came through, then Swamiji said he would make his headquarters in New York City and not go to San Francisco. But at least in the morning sessions, as his disciples listened to him speak on Chaitanya Charitamrita, these threats were all put out of mind, and the timeless, intimate teachings took up their full attention. Krishna consciousness was a struggle, keeping yourself strictly following Swamiji's code against Maya. No illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling, no meat eating. But it was possible as long as they could hear him singing and reading and speaking from Chaitanya Charitamrita. They counted on his presence for their Krishna consciousness. He was the center of their newly spiritualized lives, and he was all they knew of Krishna consciousness. As long as they could keep coming and seeing him, Krishna consciousness was a sure thing, as long as he was there. So, of course, they were completely dependent on Prabhupada for everything. Seated on the worn rug, they looked up at him, waiting for him to begin the next installment. Prabhupada cleared his throat and glanced down at Brahmananda, who sat beside the silently running tape recorder. Satsvarup entered the date in his notebook. Prabhupada began reading the Bengali verses and paraphrasing. Sanatan took the 7 gold coins from his servant and gave them to the hotel keeper. You have 8 coins, as Srila said. And Sanatan went back and found that his servant was retaining another gold coin. Why do you carry this death knell on the road? Sanatan asked. You're too attached to money. And he took the gold piece from his servant and told him to return home. Sanatan then brought the gold coin to the hotel keeper. But the hotel keeper, who admitted that he had intended to kill Sanatan for his money, now said, you are a good man and you may keep your money. But Sanatan refused. Then the hotel keeper provided Sanatan with 4 assistants. They helped Sanatan through the jungle and then left him alone. Free from his nuisance servant and from the dacoits, Sanatan felt liberated as he passed along the road alone. Soon he came upon his brother-in-law, who was traveling along the same road. His brother-in-law was a wealthy man carrying a great deal of money to buy horses. Please stay with me at least for a few days. Sanatan's brother-in-law said, it's really bad how you look. The brother-in-law knew that Sanatan was going to spiritual life, but he requested that he improve his dress by accepting a valuable blanket from him. Sanatan took the blanket and continued on his way. At last, Sanatan reached Banaras and he went straight to the home of Chandrasekhar, where Lord Chaitanya was staying, and waited outside the door. Lord Chaitanya knew Sanatan had arrived and he requested Chandrasekhar to go to the door and ask the devotee who was waiting there to come in. Chandrasekhar went out but saw only the wretched-looking Sanatan, whom he took to be half-mad Mohammedan fakir. Chandrasekhar returned to Lord Chaitanya and explained that there was no devotee outside. Was there anyone at all? The Lord asked. Yes, said Chandrasekhar, some wretched fakir. Then Lord Chaitanya went to the door and embraced Sanatan. The Lord cried tears of ecstasy, for he had at last found a devotee whom he knew was worthy to receive his entire teachings. And Sanatan cried tears of joy that his life's ambition was being fulfilled. But because he was dirty from his traveling and not worthy, he asked the Lord not to touch him. The Lord replied, it is I who benefit from touching you. Whoever touches a pure devotee is blessed. Prabhupada closed the book, ending another morning session. One of Prabhupada's main concerns was to finish and publish as soon as possible his translation and commentary of Bhagavad Gita. And one day something happened that enabled him to increase his work on the manuscript. Unexpectedly, a boy named Neil arrived. He was a student from Antioch College on a special work-study program, and he had the school's approval to work 1 term within the ashram of Swami Bhaktivedanta, which he had heard about through the newspapers. Neil mentioned that he was a good typist, and if that could be of any help to the Swami. Prabhupada considered this to be Krishna's blessing. Immediately he rented a dictaphone and began dictating tapes. Haigreve donated his electric typewriter and Neil set up his work area in Swamiji's front room and began typing 8 hours a day. Wow. Krishna is really setting things up. This inspired Prabhupada and obliged him to produce more. He worked quickly, sometimes day and night, on his Bhagavad Gita as it is. He had founded ISKCON 5 months ago, yet in his classes he was still reading the Bhagavad Gita translation of Dr. Radhakrishnan. But when Bhagavad Gita as it is would at last be published, he told his disciples it would be of major importance for the Krishna consciousness movement. At last, there would be a bona fide edition of the Gita. Whatever Swamiji said or did, his disciples wanted to hear about it. Gradually, they had increased their faith and devotion to Swamiji, whom they accepted as God's representative. And they took his actions and words to be absolute. After one of the disciples had been alone with him, the others would gather around to find out every detail of what had happened. It was Krishna consciousness. Jadurani was especially guileless in relating what Swamiji had said or done. One day, Prabhupada had stepped on a tack that Jadurani had dropped on the floor. And although she knew it was a serious offense to her spiritual master, the major importance of the event seemed to be how Prabhupada had displayed his transcendental consciousness. He silently and emotionlessly reached down and pulled the tack from his foot without so much as a cry. And once, when she was fixing a painting over his head behind a desk, she had accidentally stepped on a sitting mat. Is that an offense? She had asked. And Swamiji had replied, no. For service, you could even stand on my head. The Prabhupada could say something like that. Sometimes Brahmananda would say that Swamiji had told him something very intimate about Krishna consciousness in private. But when he would tell that what Swamiji had said, someone else would recall that the same thing was in Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada had said that the spiritual master is present in his instructions and that he had tried to put everything into those 3 volumes of the Bhagavatam, and the devotees were finding this to be true. So 3 volumes of Bhagavatam, this was a first canto, which he had written in India, translated and written in India. So, like once Prabhupada was reading Krishna book, and he told his servant that if you just read Krishna book thoroughly, you can become Krishna conscious. Once he was reading Bhagavad Gita, he said, if you read just one book, Bhagavad Gita, you can become Krishna conscious. And once he said about these 3 volumes of Bhagavatam, this is the first canto. It means every book can take us to perfection. It's just we have to read it. Okay, I guess we can stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments. Okay, you all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri.